All right, let's talk James Weldon Johnson's Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. This is a preview of the novella, not a full walkthrough explanation of every moment in the book. This is my way of getting you guys started on the reading, some suggestions on what to look for, things like that. So a couple things. First and foremost, it is not an actual autobiography. This is a work of fiction. The central character, known as the Ex-Colored Man, which you will capitalize, is not James Weldon Johnson. James Weldon Johnson is a fascinating guy. He's known for this novella. He helped found the NAACP. He was a music composer. He wrote some very popular songs of his day with his brother. Just a fascinating man who had incredible talents in a variety of ways. Just a real genius in whatever he applied himself to. And so this book is not his life, it is his fictional accounting of the life of a mixed race individual, right? So he has a white father and a black mother, and the experiences he encounters over his life that eventually, for lack of a better word, make him choose to no longer identify as black in America. This is known as passing. So this is technically a novella, because it's not a novel. It's shorter than a novel. It's 100 pages or so, 115, something like that. And it is a novella of passing. Passing is a genre of African American literature that was very common in the first half of the 20th century, the latter decades, few decades of the 19th century. So we're looking 1870s, 80s through 1920s, 30s. Basically, the decision to pass was being black in America was brutal and hard. And in some ways, it still is, of course. It was considerably worse when he was writing. And it wasn't uncommon for mixed race individuals who were light skinned enough to pass as white to choose to do so. They could pass as a different ethnicity, if not actually white, but not black anymore. And that could help them. And indeed, the ex-colored man at one point is in Florida. He's becoming fluent in Spanish. And if he wanted to, he could have just simply continued to take on sort of a generic Hispanic identity where he was working in a cigar factory, and his life would have been of a Hispanic individual, and that would have been his future. That doesn't stick. He eventually goes to New York, and he gets caught up in some really powerful musical forces in the Black community with blues and jazz and ragtime, which is a form of piano. He's a piano player. He used to play for his father when he was young. And so he has some experience related to that. And one of his goals is to eventually create a symphony of ragtime. So it is a symphony, which is a European slash white genre of music, at least it was at the time, and ragtime, which was identified as quite a unique and original Black art form. And he was going to merge the two, the way that he himself was in some ways a merger of Black and white culture with his white father, who cared for him, but never actually was his father in a meaningful sense, and his mother. He wants to create in music essentially the life that he himself has lived, caught between Black and white communities. He eventually goes to Europe with a patron. A patron is an individual that would give money to artists to support them in their artistic efforts. That is the origin of something like the Patreon concept on YouTube and whatever, support for creatives. What are some central themes? One is his own problematic relationship with his race. He does not see himself as Black as a young child until he has some rough encounters in school and involving the N-word, among other things. He is looking for white approval at quite a few different stages of his life. He is at times bothered by his Blackness. He is bothered by the treatment of Blacks in the country and wants to disassociate himself from that community so that he doesn't receive that same oppressive, harsh, violent, murderous treatment. And so he's really kind of torn. And so pay attention to his struggle, how he kind of shifts back and forth between these different communities and how he's trying to find his identity, when what we kind of start to feel is he's really struggling because maybe he doesn't have one, because America won't accept him as white. He doesn't feel fully Black, but he's just a man without a community, a man without an ethnic identity, a racial identity, though race is a dumb concept, as he goes through life. And that really is confusing for him. It's troubling for him. He is a very smart, very talented individual who can succeed, and indeed he does towards the end of his life become quite wealthy and comfortable. But it's interesting what he had to choose to get that and what he eventually gave up. So pay attention to that as well as you go. It's a good novella. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a fascinating story. It's told from the first person perspective. So we have to understand that everything is coming from his point of view. So whether he is fully honest with us or even himself is up for debate. We cannot trust that everything he says is factually accurate. And so that's something that you have to be mindful of. But as you read through it, just track his psychological shift, his attitude towards himself, towards his country, towards music, towards art in general, towards the complex dynamic in the relationship of the Black communities and the white communities in this country and in Europe, because eventually he goes to Europe for a while. His attitude towards money. There's a lot of real interesting ideas that James Weldon Johnson is wrestling with here and trying to get us to think about. And there's really no definitive answer. He makes choices that perhaps most of us would have made if we'd had the opportunity. He ultimately is a man without a family, and so he doesn't have to be tied to his racial identity. He doesn't have to be tied to his place of birth. And so it gives him some flexibility to sort of create himself. And it's who he creates himself to become as an adult, as a wealthy man in the North, that is part of what the novel is trying to, for lack of a better word, explain, help us understand why he made that decision, but also perhaps some regrets that he might have. And that's where the novel sort of ends up. Novella. I keep calling it a novel. I hope that helps, gives you some ideas to wrestle with. If I said this a little too quickly, go back, watch it again on 3/4 YouTube speed so I sound like I'm drunk, or half speed so I sound like I'm really drunk. Hopefully this gives you a good place to start, knowing what to look for, to sort of pay attention to as you go. As always, if there are any issues, you reach out, you ask me questions. I'll do my best to answer them, to guide you through this assignment, through this reading, through your choices that you want to pair with it, all that stuff. All right. Take care.